Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza here on Monday during the open week of the season number 2, joined by Chris Anderson to do some questions and answers from the subscribers here on the VIP side of Earsports. Chris, we tried to shepherd the conversation in a certain way, just like, hey, we're aware that people aren't happy with the leadership of the program. I think people are right to talk about that and display their disappointment no matter how they want to. More on that in a little bit. But boy, things maybe want to change a little bit. People want to talk about football progress of 2/3 of the season, what could happen in the final third. There's still some possibilities for this team. A lot of has to happen, but still, we wanted to clear the clouds a little bit and talk about things as they are, things as they could be on the field, maybe make room for some basketball as well, because that starts in a week from today, Chris. Um, and some people just can't play by the rules, can they?
No, they cannot. I think we got two questions into the message board thread, and boom, there it was. When is fired? When are coaching changes? What is wrong here? Etc. Etc. So
It's fine. Just
we will
today's not
address it.
the
We will
time or
talk about
place.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we were hoping for a little something different, but it's all right. We'll get there eventually.
Just programming note today, since it's an open week, there is no game on Saturday. You do not have coordinator interviews, so no Jordan Leslie, no Chad Scott, also no players, and just Neil Brown. That comes up at 1 o'clock. We'll cover that, what he says, and then all the other stories that come out of that for the rest of the week. And then obviously getting into some basketball previews because West Virginia begins November 4 at home against Robert Morris. A lot to get to before that about where things are with the football season, where things may go. What do you say we get right to it, Chris?
Let's do it. Got several questions. Again, we will address some of these during the podcast, a couple more with 3-minute videos, and then any other ones in a VIP written mailbag that will go up on Tuesday. Mike, I'm going to start with a four-parter podcast bait series of questions from WVU Flyer. And I'm picking it not just because it's podcast bait, but because it's also, addresses the way you put it. Said, hey, let's discuss the 2/3 mark of the season, what happened, what could be to come. And I feel like this is a good way to kind of summarize all of that because he asked four questions, a lot of them, overviews of the program, overviews of the football season. So let's get
Mm-hmm.
down to it. The first one, MVP for the offense, MVP for the defense. What do you have 2/3 of the way through the season right now?
This is very hard. Like I think their best player on offense has been Wyatt Milam. Just if you watch him play, if you pay attention to what he does and what doesn't happen on that side, it'd be really hard to say he's not their best player and hasn't performed the best relative to his expectations, the team's expectations, what they need, what a possible first round pick is supposed to do. But you're saying your left tackle on offense, that's okay. That's kind of I mean, that may be the state of affairs. That would be my pick though, because no one else really has eye popping stats, and that's probably part of the problem too. I would note too that when somebody asked Chad Scott last week, who's the most consistent player on offense, he went with tight end Traylon Davis, who I don't know, maybe he's like that middle reliever who gets a bunch of MVP votes for the Cleveland Guardians, right? Just a guy who is there all the time and does his job and doesn't get a lot of fanfare. Defensively, it's got to be TJ Jackson, and I don't know. I'll let you explain more about that, but who on that side of the ball has really done the job this season? I mean, they needed him too, like to be a starter and then also to be disruptive. I just his production, what they needed when they got in some trouble, what they needed in big games. He's probably the easy pick there.
Yeah, I ran into the same trouble trying to figure out offense because on offense you look at say the skill players first and foremost, and the running backs they're split. It's kind of a split vote thing when you talk about like say if you're voting for MVP and two great players on the same team, and people are wondering who's responsible for that. And the rushing attack is averaging at least just through the running backs over 100 yards per game, except White's getting 500 total, Donaldson 450 total, and they've both been kind of up and down throughout the season. Certainly not consistent. Um, you look at receivers. Well, there's Hudson Clement. He's averaging less than leading the team in catches and yards and has less than 50 yards per game. Like, I don't know. You're not picking that as your MVP. Green has been up and down. I can't. Like, he's just not nowhere near as good as he was last year. He's throwing almost as many interceptions as he has touchdowns at this point. Yes, he's rushing the ball pretty well, but can't be that. So I'm with you. I'm coming back to it, somebody on the offensive line. And that's just kind of, again, as you put it, maybe just a speaks to the state of the offense at this point in the season. Defense, I'm going TJ Jackson. And they were begging, dying, pleading for anything that would put pressure on the quarterback. TJ Jackson provided that and did so. I don't want to say after the fact, but was not a starter, was playing, 20 snaps. And then Eddie V gets hurt, and all of a sudden he's thrust into a much larger role, continues to produce. And that has an impact on all three levels. When he's able to get that pressure, it helps out the secondary. So I think he is, without a doubt, for me, clearly the MVP of the defense.
But Tormo Mobile's been really good too. Like he's come on
Mhm.
strong. He's had some big time games lately. But again, that's equivalent to your left tackle in offense. It's your nose guard. You're not going to get a ton of stats and action from him. But if you watch him play, boy, he's like a commanding presence in the middle all of a sudden. And not, I mean, for a couple weeks now too.
Next question. Which player on offense, defense has failed to meet expectations? Let's go. It's not least valuable player, but maybe somebody that was expected to be great and was just okay, or was expected to be okay and has been terrible, whichever way we want to look at it. Mike, who do you got?
Just a hard one to single out for the offense for the very reasons we just talked about. But I don't know how you couldn't pick Garrett Green. Just supposed to be better in a lot of aspects of the season. It's just not. And we're going to answer questions about what they're going to do at quarterback. I'm sure if not, we're going to ask him. That's not the situation you want if he's overshot the bar. And then defensively, to make the move for Aubrey Burks to make him the spear, have him close to the ball, be really active. And you get hurt, I understand that, but just he hasn't produced the way they wanted to or they needed to in that defense. And they moved a lot of stuff around. They moved him from the back end of the safety defensive backfield to make him more active, make him more involved, and it just hasn't worked. And I know it's unfair because he's been hurt and he has been able to get back in the lineup and then stay there when he does. But there's a gap there from what they wanted him to be. I mean, if he's on the field and he does what they think he could have done as a blitzer, as a run stopper in coverage, because they've had a lot of trouble with slots and guys getting up the seam in the middle, their defense might be better. Hard critique, I understand, but that would be my answer.
And I hate to say it, but I agree with you on both fronts. And it's the fact that both of them were essentially the face of that side of the ball coming into the season. And as noted, Green, almost as many interceptions as touchdowns, has struggled quite a bit. Nico gets his first full-time start and comes in and I would dare say had a better game than any game that Green has had so far this year in his first start. Um, and then Burks, whole offseason of drama surrounding him. His transfer and kind of, I don't want to say like played into it, but wasn't shying away from the conversation about that. And then kind of again, he's been hurt the last couple weeks, last few weeks. But even before that, he was, I don't want to say a non-factor, but how many play can you remember a single Aubrey Burks play so far this season? I can't.
Yeah, I remember the deep ball against Penn State.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
A
yeah.
single positive play
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
can't. And he's supposed to be the man on that side of the ball. And like you said, they changed the entire defense around for him to put him in this spot and to showcase him, and just hasn't been the case. So again, I kind of got the same answers. I was trying to go different directions, but even some of the guys that I would say have been disappointing are transfers. So your expectations can be variable with that, depending on how they transition to a new team, new scheme, new coverage, all that stuff. So I'm with you. Same too. Again, hate to be boring, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. Um, Best and worst coaching decision was number 3 on this question series of questions.
Boy, best. Um, Listen, I like I don't understand the hate about this. I like them continually taking the ball. That's not a single one. It's hard to pick out a good one. The fake field goal was good. I've enjoyed a lot of their fourth down decisions to go this year. I'd like to see them do more things with certain players. So like I can't really pick things out there. You could probably give Brown credit for going fast late against Kansas, but like kind of had to. So that's not like some stroke of genius there. But I really like the fact that they just take the ball first on it. It keeps their defense off the field to start a game. They can get into some stuff. It's 14 straight games. It's not an accident. Somebody has to take the ball away from West Virginia just to screw them up a little bit. But West Virginia keeps winning the toss too. That's the other part about it too. It happens a lot in this 14 games. I think 10 times, maybe nine. Um, I just like that. Was it best on defense, you said?
It wasn't specified to offense or defense. It was just best and worst coaching decision so far this year.
Yeah, the worst is, boy, there's a lot. Really didn't like the way they defended that late series against Penn State. That was just tricky, like just what they went to. And not when they just, this is a bugaboo for me, I think, but when you see your defensive scramble, you got to call timeouts. So that's like a prolonged thing. Hard to pick out a great thing that the offense has done. It's hard to pick out a bad thing the offense has done, not because the offense hasn't been good or the defense hasn't been bad, but what's the one? And if you think Trey Latham floating around deep middle and cover two was a bad decision a couple of times against Tedder Roy and McMillan, I'm not going to argue with you there. Um, Boy, tough to single out one though that stands out as like a profoundly bad or a profoundly good on either side of the ball. I don't know. Help me out here.
Yeah, I'll hop in. I think offensively, I love the sustained aggressiveness on fourth down. That was a decision that Neil Brown made. What would you say after the Pitt game a couple years ago? That was in Pittsburgh, where West Virginia had what was it, fourth and a half of a yard, and
Yeah.
on Pitt's side of the ball decided not to go for it. Ended up costing them the game, and ever since basically that point, or maybe a couple weeks later, Neil Brown has been super aggressive. West Virginia currently leads the entire nation in fourth down conversions so far this season and has done so at a pretty good clip, like almost 70%. They're 17 for 25 on fourth down conversion so far this year. And again, I know I'm going to start sounding like Neil Brown because I'm an stats guy, analytics guy, and almost more often than you might think, than the casual fan might think, you're supposed to go for it on fourth down, at least as far as the numbers go. And West Virginia has taken that approach and been much, much more aggressive on fourth down, and it has paid off. Bad coaching decisions, uh, 15, 20 of them. I don't know how you could single them down in things that are going on with the
Yeah.
secondary, different schemes and whatnot. I mean, at some point, you got to figure out what it is. And if you're 9, 10 weeks into the season and you still have guys confused about how to line up, something's not right. Like whether it's the coaching decision of how to run the scheme, how to call into play, who to put out there, or even dating back multiple months and who to bring into the program to fill these spots, something was wrong. Maybe multiple things were wrong with that decision, those decisions. So that was one for me. Because I tried to go back and like, hey, this decision in the Pitt game that helped cost them,
Yeah. Right.
that. But you know what? Like, here we go. Prepare yourselves. Those people that call themselves the Wolf Pack, prepare yourselves because like some of those decisions, that wasn't bad coaching decisions. That was poor execution by the players. Again, we've talked about the non-block on that one run play. I believe it was Traylon Ray. If he hits that block like he's supposed to, game's over. West Virginia wins. Everybody's happy. Um, there was another one with Garrett Green where he got sacked on third down. It's just a bad read, bad decision by him. If he makes the right read, right decision, he's West Virginia seals the game again. So it's hard for me to look at that game. I tried to. I immediately thought of that game and said, I bet I can pick something out from that game. And I'm not sure there were many coaching decisions that cost West Virginia that game.
The one that stands out is just not swapping centers when Brandon Yates was hurt and he couldn't get the ball back. That was a
Oh
problem.
man, good one, good one, good one, good one.
Just a,
Yeah.
a problem early in the week, that got a little better, but it didn't go away. It popped up during the game, and just to not have the player ready to go as a reserve or to not have the nerve to pull the trigger and switch centers, that certainly stands out because they said they lost 11 plays in that game. That's a big difference, and 5 of them were snaps. Think about this, Chris. Saturday there were 62 snaps and 57 of them moved forward. That's the margin right there. So when you create 11 bad plays and 5 of them are negatives, yeah, that's a significant coaching error, I think.
And to round out our WVU Flyer portion of the podcast, he wants to know, is this team capable of running the table in November?
I, you have to really cross your fingers and say, yeah, they're capable of it. They haven't shown you that yet. So I couldn't say that. I mean, they have a hard time putting 4 quarters together. Doing that 4 weeks in a row is going to be difficult. 2 of them are on the road. One's a long trip. They're going to see a pretty good defense the first time up. They're going to see 2 pretty good offenses after that. So could they? Sure. I mean, it's realistic until it's no longer realistic, but um, you'd have a hard time saying that this team, from what you've seen so far, can do that. You would have an easier time saying the team as packaged and presented in the offseason could do it. Like that team could, but this doesn't appear to be that team. Maybe it's working its way into that shape and form, but haven't seen that yet.
I'm in the same boat. I think it's it's not impossible. Certainly not impossible. And you look at the games, and this is not a perfect metric, but if you look at the football power index predictions, 55-45, 54-46, 54-46, 60-40. Those are the splits one way or the other in each of the upcoming 4 games, with the only one where West Virginia is not either a favorite or 45% chance to win being the Cincinnati game, which they're only giving them a 40% chance. Again, the football power index really boosts up home field advantage, whether home that a team is good at home or not, they boost it up. So to say that that is the least likely game that West Virginia is going to win, I find that hard to believe. I think it might be at right. It's at Texas Tech, right? Yeah, it's at Texas Tech to end the season. That might be the toughest one, which we'll get to in another question. But yeah, I mean, it's possible. Again, we talked about going back after when West Virginia was what 2-2, and said, hey, what's the possibility of West Virginia? Hey, it's a big parlay. It's four games. The odds of winning each one about 50-50, but once you do 50-50 4 different times, your odds of getting all of them are pretty slim, but it is possible. I do think it's possible.
Yeah.
Next question. Be in WVU 72. All right, you ready?
Okay.
WVU returned 2 safeties, brought in 2 starters from a Power 4 defense that finished top 25 in the country, returned a former 4-star in his 3rd year, and brought in 4 other transfers that were really good at the FCS/G5 level. However, we are the worst pass defense in the country. Were the transfers bad fits for our scheme, or is our scheme just not effective?
It's a lot of each, probably. That's a terrible answer, but those are all the explanations that you've heard and you cobbled together in that question. So good job by you, right? That's everything that people have said about the situation. And they're probably all true to some regard. To me, it's late in the season to use it takes players time. They played a lot of football in the summer, and then they played 8 games so far. I think you have a hard time saying that like Garnett Hollis and Anthony Wilson no longer speak the same language. So that's tricky there. It's quite possible that the evaluations weren't perfect. It's quite possible that the offenses you see at this level or the opponents you see at this level are just better, and that is enough to distinguish a player. And it's also possible that what people want is not what they get. Like sometimes like this urge to be right is worse than just kind of admitting you're wrong and trying to fix the problem there too. Trouble is that West Virginia doesn't have a lot of options beyond playing some of their transfers. Um, there's probably some scheme things here that just how they teach and what they do that you could look at and say, why are they doing that? Like, or is that what this guy does best? But you're playing defense for West Virginia. West Virginia is not coaching a defense that is specific to X number of transfers that are brought in. Now, can you lean into some of the stuff? Yeah, but I think they have. Like Hollis is a big guy. He probably should be playing the boundary corner. Do you want him floating around in space? If you just play him left side, right side, and he's got to guard the field side, he doesn't look great in space sometimes. And if you saw him spinning around trying to track down McMillan the other night, you'd probably understand why they don't want him out in the open sometimes. Garnes is probably a pretty good field player. He hasn't been able to play a whole lot, and he's been small at times against opponents too. I don't think Garnes has been as bad as maybe some of the optics or evaluations say, but he hasn't been there. Fagan probably should have been start playing earlier if he was going to play like this, but maybe it took him time to play this well. And then defensively, like up front, I think Jackson's probably lived up to expectations. Um, those are the biggest. And Jaheim Joseph has been like a standout from the first game on, and Tarnu needed some time to find the new position and just kind of like slipped and fell into Spear. And maybe that was better for him, so maybe that took time. But some of those things you'd like to have figured out before the season starts. I just think that they probably didn't get quite what they anticipated or quite what they presented. And on top of that, it just does take a little bit of time. It's taken longer for whatever reason, struggles, injuries, the need to actually bench or pull some people out of the game because they weren't helpful. And you're kind of like starting over a couple of times with asking your defense to do different things by playing more passive, by keeping everything in front of them. And I think sometimes it's just hard to play zone in college. Um, you're kind of athletes, you want to go out and compete and play man, and everybody could play man, they would. This doesn't seem to be a team that's in the secondary, at least, maybe even at the linebacker level, that's great at playing man, but also isn't good at playing zone either, which is really that's not a good place to be. Is like not good at either one of them. But it's a little bit of everything that mentioned in the question, but some more than others for sure. That probably is personnel related too.
Yeah, it mentioned it before the season. In the win big, fall flat pieces that I do, said the one of the reasons West Virginia might fall flat is because you can't expect the same success that they had last year in the secondary, and it wasn't even, I would say, success because the defense was bad, or in at least as far as pass defense goes. But Beanie Bishop was great. Malachi Ruffin all of a sudden became a very serviceable, maybe even above average cornerback in the Big 12 conference. You can't expect that kind of, and then they're just gone and you have nobody with experience. You can't just expect both spots to again fill up with new guys, like it did the year before. And it hasn't. I thought maybe with so many options, anybody would kind of fill in there, but that really hasn't been the case. And again, maybe the more concerning thing for me is let me throw some numbers out at you, Mike. This is the first 4 games of the year versus the next 4 games of the year. 112 passes for one. This is the first 4 games. 112 pass attempts, 1,026 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, with a passer rating of 161.
Oh God, does it get
The next four
worse?
games of the year: 113 pass attempts, 1,062 yards, 9.4 yards per attempt, 8 TDs, 2 interceptions, with a passer rating of 163. It has, you could argue it's gotten slightly worse in the next 4 games compared to the first 4 games of the year. At worst, it's the same, which you would hope that with all of these new transfers and, hey, these guys need some time to figure it all out, that it would get better as the season went along, but it's actually been the same or worse for West Virginia, as far as pass defense goes. And again, one of the worst in the country in just about every metric right now.
Man, okay.
Which leads us to our next question, again centered around the secondary. And we're looking for answers. I like this. Maybe, kind of. Brotownier says, at this stage of the season, what can realistically be done to do, if anything, with the issues in the secondary?
I don't believe that they have many other options as far as personnel. Just I wouldn't. I don't think that Wilson and Joseph are replaceable as your safeties. Like they're playing okay, and I don't know who would play behind them. Like Israel Boyce and geez, Aiden Tagalo and Elson. I'm not even sure who the other safeties are at this point. So no one's pushing them. Like you're not hearing anything about got to get these guys on the field. And you kind of heard that when it came to Jacoby Spells and TJ Crandall and even Fagan, who kind of had a rocky start, but people said, no, big guy, competitive, watch him. Let's give him a chance. And he's played pretty good. So even like the personnel department, maybe make some changes at corner. But I again, like I think they have who they have, and they're probably the best options for that. Like I'm not sure you want to run Spells and Crandall out there a bunch. Maybe Fagan could play the Hollis role because he's bigger. I don't know, but you're banking on a lot of Spells and Crandall, and that hasn't looked good, and it hasn't happened. And they tried a bunch of things, Chris. They play quarters, they play cover three, they play cover two, they tried to play man. When they've been good, they haven't had a lot to complain about when it comes to mistakes and misalignments. Trouble is that hasn't been very often. So then you go, okay, when have they been good? And they're going to tell you this. They've been good when they've just hit their marks. Like, you're supposed to do this, they do it. You're supposed to do this, they do it. So the argument here is, man, put something new in, try something different. What makes you think they can do that? Like, what makes you think that in an open week they could learn, some weird from the desert defense here that they just drew up on the play ride home and so we got to try this, right? What makes you think they could teach that, play that, execute that against four opponents and a couple pretty good offensively? I don't know that that's even a good idea to bring up in like a cocktail party. Never mind like in a coaching meeting, right? So they're going to say this, and it's probably frustrating, but it's probably true too. They're going to have to find the simplest thing that they do and just get good at it and try to branch off of that. And what would probably help the secondary was if they were just a lot more active and consistent as pass rushers. And when they've been good up front, they've twisted and stunted and gotten home a bunch, and they've taken good routes to the ball as defensive ends or defensive tackles, and made the quarterback hurry. But behind that, linebackers have been in their spots in the zone. The cornerbacks haven't like lost contained or lost coverage of their receiver, like the things they're supposed to do. So, what can they do? A lot. What should they do? Not a lot. Just get good reps and practice week after week after week, and hope it gets better. But like, I think asking them at this point to try something new, you're inviting a almost inevitable set of new problems.
So you're sounding a lot like Jordan Leslie's comments last week
Oh
that
man.
sent the fans into a tizzy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not entirely sure he's wrong. Like again, if they've tried all the different schemes, again, I'm not saying the coaching's been perfect, the play calls have been perfect, not even close, but they've tried the schemes. They've tried everything that they've practiced. They've tried new personnel and it's not working. The answer is get good. Like that's basically
Yeah.
what Jordan Leslie said was guys got to get better. And I know that sent fans off a cliff there, but that's the current situation. To your point, there's no time to sit here and try to install a new defense to do anything else. There are no more players. Hey, there's nobody in the bullpen, right, Mike? There was nobody else in the bullpen to come in and play in the secondary at this point in time. So
That's a bad message in week 3, by the way. It's not a bad
yes,
message in week 10. I promise. Like, there's a big difference there. But like, yeah, to everything you just said, I agree with, because I said it as well. But like, I think
yeah,
that's the right wrong answer.
right. It's not nobody listening is going to enjoy that answer. I think is what
No.
I was trying to get at. Like
Oh, I can
you're
think of
right,
some people who
but
would.
uh, next question, SJJ SWVU4. Where is the breakdown from 18 months ago when WVU was a leader in basketball NIL, buying anyone and everyone they could, to now crying poor in basically every level of the athletic department? Was Huggins just a walking ATM machine people couldn't say no to? Or how did we get from there to here?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is in the question again. Just totally different times. People were really trying to help Huggins. He had a lot of people who were supportive, who wanted to see this through with him, give him a chance to compete in this era of college basketball. So recruit and find good players, pay them. And that was a promise that was made for like one time. It wasn't a thing that was understood. It's going to be here every year. We're going to evergreen donate to this NIL fund. And I can understand that you might ding an athletic department if they don't have money for salaries, money for whatever resources that a program might need. NIL is different. It's just different. It's a harder thing to fundraise than, hey, help me build this thing or help me renovate this thing. I think you're going to have issues going to people and saying, hey, can you just pay this player to come here? Well, who is he? He's a really good guy from another program. What's he like? I don't know. He's a really good player, right? That's a hard sell for donors. It just is. And then if you look at what happened on the court, it stunk. Like, they put a lot of money in the last season. Like, those players made a lot of money. And what'd you get? 9 wins, the most lost in school history, and an absolutely forgettable season. Imagine pick up the phone and be like, hey, are you good for 6 figures again? No, lose my number, right? That's probably the answer you get. And there were Bob Huggins friends and supporters in there that are still supporters of the program. There were Bob Huggins friends and supporters there who just aren't right now. And not because they don't like the new coach or the new staff or the new direction, but like they just said, hey, we'll do this one time and see where it goes. Chris, that could have been you coaching, me coaching, John Wooden coaching. If you give someone a ton of money and they give you a 9-23 record, you are not going to be in a rush to do that again. Can they come back around a year from now or 6 months from now and say, hey, what do you think? Yeah, that's the goal. But they had to understand it was going to be two large steps backwards this year. And still, you're probably looking like 2.6, $2.7 million in NIL is what I understand. That's far from where they were last year, but it's not hard to get back to where they were last year, especially if they win. And that's same thing in football. Those conversations happen, those phone calls get answered, or those messages get returned a lot quicker and a lot easier when you have substance behind your request. And right now, football lacks it, and basketball is working to get it back.
It's an oddly specific number there, Michael. $2.652 million. All right.
So
Okay.
I've done some digging. I'll write the stuff this week about just the football situation and where it ranks in different capacities. And like I I asked somebody what they heard about West Virginia, and that person told me for basketball. That's the only basketball number I have in this whole thing, but I just couldn't help myself there.
And it goes back to my comment, I think it was last week, about this was like this whole NIL era is like when you open a restaurant or you start a business. If you are not
It's
hitting the ground running and ready to go, you're screwed. You are screwed, screwed, screwed. And the football program was not ready. They set themselves back several years, scared off donors, picked off fans. And that goes back to that, we're not talking, I'm not talking about this year. I'm talking back to the problems that led to the firing of Shane Lyons several years ago. And then the basketball program, they tried a little harder. Like you said, they dumped money into it. They got the donors. And yes, a lot of the credit of that goes to Bob Huggins and the connections that he had. But yeah, 9-23, nine and whatever it was, like it's just not going to cut it. And if you guys, hey, wait, I gave you guys $250,000 and we got 9 wins. Nah, don't call me back. Like I said, lose my number. Take me off the list. We'll see. I'll call you. Don't call me. So it's not a fun spot to be in for either
it,
program right now. Because yeah, both programs are in prove it mode before you get another penny from a lot of donors. So yikes. M Barnett 16 asks, what do you make of the leak info on the basketball secret scrimmage, like WVU out rebounding Wake Forest, the defense forcing turnovers, and winning it when the offense struggled, and Hunter Sally getting, quote, locked down? Um, I had heard the first three. I hadn't heard about the Hunter Sally part of it, but thoughts? I mean, is any of that surprise you?
that they out rebounded somebody, yeah. That
Yeah,
they played good defense in an exhibition game in Beckley where there was nobody in the stadium, or that even that they won, that doesn't surprise me. But if they were really physical and they out rebounded a team that's supposed to be, upper quarter, I think, of the ACC this year, that's good. They have some players. I've heard some of that stuff isn't quite true. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Just to be honest with you, not a priority for me. It's trying to like get behind the closed doors there. We'll learn more. Both the coaches know each other, like each other, and said, "Hey, can we keep this quiet and not put a box score out and not leak it to people?" Um, what I heard is that there were not many people in there. Like it was closed, and like people are like, "How is this getting out?" Well, you know how it's getting out. So now they're going to be like super vigilant about, hey, players, don't tell anybody this stuff, right? Because there again, there wasn't a lot of people there. I think it's promising. I guess it's good. Um, I don't know if I was a new coach and I was trying to get people to buy in. I might call a reporter, send a text message, and be like, "Hey, can we talk?" And can like a day from now, could you leak out some information about the scrimmage that you heard? Like that might be me. Um, integrity, Darren DeVries. I like this.
Hey,
Makes me feel
hey,
good
Mike, did you know that Twitter has encrypted messaging now? Did you know that?
I've heard something about this. Yeah,
I think it just
possibility. We'll
just pops
signal.
in your DMs and have no idea where it came from. Just
Yeah,
totally.
if if that stuff's true, they won. I'm not whatever. Someone wins, someone loses. That's not the point of these exhibitions. But like I heard guys were playing with like 9 fouls too. So
That
defense is
changes the game entirely. I hate that they do that. Like I
probably could
hate
be
that they
pretty
just let them play.
aggressive, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
sure Salas is going to get a lot of whistles in the ACC that he didn't get in Beckley, right? Or, Sincere Harris is probably going to have to play differently in the first half when he has 2 fouls, when he's playing with like 5 fouls in the first half.
right.
Things like that. Like that doesn't get me. But like the fact they got rebounded and that, they get another positive experience, that's good. It's just part of the snowball you're rolling toward the starting line right now.
All right, switching back to football. I'm gonna take us back and forth here, but we had a couple questions about this, and you and I kind of sort of discussed it before we hopped on here. One from 2146 ear, another from GD Full, both kind of around the idea of West Virginia winning out and going 7-2 in the conference. Is it possible to make the Big 12 title game? And then, 2146, he says it's maybe not as possible, not likely at least. Um, and is it because, teams are not all playing each other because there are so many teams in the Big 12? The answer to the second part of that is yes.
Yeah.
When you don't, everybody doesn't play everybody. If everybody was playing everybody, 7-2 probably gets you in. When it's not that way, 7-2 might not get you in. So, Mike, have you done the maths on this yet?
I have 7-2 can get you in just because there's 4 games left and people can lose. They just can. So if people lose 3 games, 4 games, then your 2 is better. West Virginia is caught in a group of 2 loss teams with 2 teams it plays. Either Cincinnati or West Virginia will have 3 losses when they're done playing. And then if it's still -2, Texas Tech has 2 losses right now. If it's -2 and West Virginia comes out there, one of those is going to have 3 losses. So that's very simply the way to get yourself up and over that bar. Kansas State and Iowa State play each other. One of those teams is going to lose. That's above West Virginia. Um, so there's elimination games out there that would naturally lift West Virginia up. If it goes through with just 2 losses and other teams take damage, yeah, and like that's the easy answer here. Is it likely? That's where things get difficult because you're going to cross out Cincinnati and Texas Tech from there. Iowa State and Kansas State have head-to-heads against West Virginia. So if Iowa State loses a game coming up, and then Kansas State, how about this? If Iowa State loses one game, Kansas State goes through undefeated. They get to Farmageddon. They're both, or Kansas State is now a 1-loss team. Iowa State is a 1-loss. Hold on. I had this right in my head and I lost my paperwork. If Kansas State loses once more and Iowa State loses twice, they go to Farmageddon. And they both end up with 2 losses. So if Kansas State wins that game, Iowa State has a second loss. Kansas State carries 2 losses to the finish line. Now you have 3 2-loss teams: West Virginia, Kansas State, Iowa State. West Virginia loses the tiebreaker there because it lost to both those in a head-to-head. It's going to lose the mini conference there. If one of those teams is above West Virginia, a 2-loss, West Virginia would be above a 3-loss team there. So you don't have to worry about that. So a lot's going to happen. The problem, though, is that it's quite likely, Chris, we have to talk about BYU being 12-0. BYU is not BYU. That's about as different from BYU as you can get. BYU may go undefeated. Colorado might not lose again. West Virginia could go through 4-0, get all the help it needs. Kansas State and Iowa State could end up with 3 losses. But if BYU is undefeated or has 1 loss, and if Colorado has just 1 loss, they're going to be above West Virginia. So they're going to need help. They're going to need teams to lose. They're going to need the right teams to lose so they can get out of tiebreaker hell. And they're going to need to be like alone, probably without ties, to get into that second place spot. If they're in first place, that's fine, but they're going to need a lot of help to get up in there. It's as confusing as I made it sound, I guess. It could be simpler, but they can do it because teams have to lose. They're going to have to win games, and the teams they beat will have to lose, obviously. And they're going to need some of those other games are going to happen. Like Iowa State and Kansas State are going to play. If the right team wins and the right team loses, that helps West Virginia. And if BYU and Colorado lose some games, that's where it gets crazy, because if you have a bunch of teams with 2 losses, then the tiebreakers are really crazy. Like it's not just like head-to-head directly. It's not like mini conference stuff. It's going to be hard to get a decisive winner in a mini conference when you haven't played those teams. So if Colorado, BYU, West Virginia end up in a mass of teams that have 2 losses, the tiebreakers are so hard to predict how that works out. But the fact that you haven't played, you don't take losses to BYU and Colorado in those tiebreakers, right? So you have a chance to actually move up. It's very complex, but it's not impossible.
Yeah. The mass of tied teams, I think, is the clearest yet muddiest way for West Virginia to get in.
Yeah.
Starting point for those who don't want to quite follow it yet, you are obviously rooting for West Virginia to win out, and you should be rooting for Cincinnati and Texas Tech to win all the games that are not West Virginia. And that has nothing to do with strength of the schedule or anything like that, but because Cincinnati plays, I believe, both Iowa State and Kansas State,
Yep.
and Texas Tech plays Colorado. So it gets more losses for the teams that are also still ahead of West Virginia. So root for West Virginia and root for Cincinnati and Texas Tech when they're not playing West Virginia. And you're going to go into the last weekend with West Virginia and, say, Texas Tech possibly playing for a spot in the Big 12 title game if
Yep.
those things happen. So
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
it's crazy, crazy. It's kind of hard to believe, but that's where it is. That's what's going to happen in this league, I think. Um,
It would really help if Colorado fell apart.
yeah, yes, it would. But have you seen their schedule?
Oh my gosh. Have you seen BYU schedule?
Well, that's what I was about to say. I was about to tell you, might as well just forget BYU and just put them in the title game.
They're
And
not
then you're
losing
just hoping
twice.
for everyone else because,
Yeah.
like, yeah, BYU is Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, Houston. So three of the four worst teams in the league right now, they still get to
Hmm.
play. Yikes.
And Kansas.
Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Um, let's see. Where do you want to go? Pick one. You want to go football or here you go. Nice feed. It says, does Neil said he lives in a bubble, but do you think he listens to the Q&A pods?
Oh, of course not.
Well, the answer is I don't think he listens to it, but other people listen to it and then share what's said. If there's something worth sharing, which we hope there is
Oh,
something worth
always.
sharing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mm.
Um, let's see. White Rhino 42 was the secondary was what is this which secondary was worse, 2022 or this year? I never thought 2022 could be beat, but was 22? I mean, I know it was bad, but was it this bad? Like I was wondering if that was a typo and he meant 2012 because obviously 2012
That was
is
a bad one.
yeah, like that one not difficult. Was 2020 yeah, 2022 111th in the country in pass
Who was on
defense.
that? Who are the corners on that team?
It's been a bad
It
couple
has
years for the secondary,
Alonzo
let's put it that
Adai
way.
and um
Because was that Adai and Young and them in the at safety?
oh boy.
No,
Was Scotty Young on that team?
Burks, Floyd. Who's the corners? Oh, Ajayi, a little bit of
Ooh.
Malachi Ruffin in there.
McCormick came in, didn't
Wesley
play.
McCormick. Ooh,
Yeah.
that was the year. Was that the year Andrew Wilson Lamp started and then played one game and then you just never saw him again, except when
Yeah,
he
that was
was causing
the Kansas
turnovers
game.
on special teams?
Yeah, where they cut the cord at the Kansas game. They made a bunch of changes after that. That was the second game of the year.
Yeah,
Here we are, week what, coming up on week 10.
yeah.
Um, that one doesn't have the talent that this secondary has, I would say. But then this secondary is, I mean, statistically worse, right? So maybe to do less with more might actually give this one a tip. I mean, would you say that this secondary has more talent? Like if you just looked at players and whatever rankings or evaluations you
Yes.
have, I think you would probably pick these guys over them, right?
Yes, I would. If
Yeah,
you,
but
yeah, without knowing what actually happened on the field, I would take this group over that group every day of the week.
hmm. Oh, that's interesting. That's a good question. I'm trying not to think about those things.
Um, all right, there's a couple questions here, Mike, that I guess we're going to address right
Okay.
now to
Mhm.
finish things out. Um, one from Strange Duck says, "Are billboards a good way to advertise?" And Cobb002 says, "What do you think about Fire Neil Brown's latest work?" Um, for those
Uh,
listening, um, apparently, I don't know. I woke up this morning to the message board post that somebody had posted a picture that Fire Neil Brown billboards went up around town. I'll just leave it there. Thoughts? But
so I don't have a problem with this. Like, I'm not going to tell people how to spend their money. I'm not going to tell fans what to do. Like, I think season tickets are a racket and people are crazy for buying them, right? And doing massive donations for it. But I totally understand why people go to games and want season tickets, right? The exact same part of my brain says that people are right to be fed up and to express their anger, right? Would I do this? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right? Do we have anything to do with this? No. I don't know if people are gonna pin this back on us for our site or whatever, but like, don't care either. Like, it's a total separate problem. Like, if people are mad at you, Chris, because of your affiliation of this, that is the most misplaced emotion. Um, I think it is a way to get people's attention. They are strategically placed. It is hard to get from Cheat Lake to the campus without passing a couple of them. And I don't know if that's what they meant to do or what, but that's the truth. And when you're coming in at certain hours in the morning because you like to get to work early, if those are where I think they are, those are bright blue and bright gold in the dark, right? That's going to be really hard to miss them. And especially when you're sitting at certain traffic lights, doesn't move the needle. TBD. I think that I think you're going to see a natural reaction for West Virginia by saying this is unfortunate. I wish fans would, have better intentions and would do more with their emotional investment than this. That might be missing the problem or the complaint. But I think that's what the reaction is going to be. I don't think anybody's going to go, you know what? No one's going to be sitting there holding a Dunkin' Donuts at a traffic light on 705 and see that sign and go, yeah, it's a good idea. Right? But it's gonna be embarrassing because people are gonna write stories about it. People are gonna post about it on Twitter. People are gonna do TV stories about it. Um, you'll probably see like photos of that the next time that West Virginia plays a game and there's a sideline shot of Neil Brown coming back from a timeout or before a game starts or in between halves. Like, that's just now part of it. Um, it's not it doesn't make things any different than what they are. It might for a while get you like some heat for sure, which is the intended goal. But like, I think this is just very simply people saying enough's enough. I'm not okay with this. And schools always say we need fans to do something. Fans did something here. It's not what the school wanted, but like, fans did something here too. So hey, that's that's notable. But beyond that, man, like, I don't know what to say or what to think about it. But like, also, man, what I think of what I say doesn't really matter here. Like, the act is done. Good for them. And now you figure out where it goes from here.
My stance on this was the same as it was for the plane, and I don't know if we talked about it on the pod or not, but I responded to some of our members on the board when they were talking about the airplane, and I said, hey, is this something I would do? No, not personally. I'm not a huge fan of this, in part because it I feel for the players on the current team that are just trying to win football games and play it out the season, and then they have to deal with this. That's my biggest issue with it. Um, and yeah, there's part of it that's like, hey, there's coaches' families and stuff. But again, I know the argument of, hey, that's why you get paid millions of dollars. True, like that you get paid, coaches get paid more, so they deal because they have to deal with this stuff. Um, but hey, man, I'm not spending my hard-earned money on tickets, on season tickets, on donating to NIL. So if I were one of those people that was spending my money, investing my money with West Virginia University, with this football program, and it was not getting the results that I prefer, and I say, hey, I am giving you my money. I would like X to happen, Y to happen. And the school was, hey, thanks for your money. See you later. Who knows what I might do? And this is what I think, to your point, this is what the fans are saying. Hey, we gave our money in other ways. We used our money in other ways, and we didn't get the results we wanted, and no one's listening. Here's what's going to happen now. So again, I'm not a big fan of it, but if you're trying to get your point across, it's going to make your point because I was looking at those addresses. Somebody posted the addresses on there, and I was picturing them, and I was like, my first thought was slightly different from yours because mine is, my brain is recruiting focused here on
Yeah.
this stuff. Was, oh man, can they drive recruits in from the airport on official visits without driving past those? Can they get down to the Marriott where they stay in the waterfront and then get from the Marriott
Yeah.
to the stadium without seeing those? Who, yeah, you like you said from Cheat Lake, which where the coaches presumably most of them live over. So, yeah, strategically placed, if you will.
Let me add two things here too. One, I watched a Hallmark Christmas movie the other night where there was a baggage mix up and three people had the same bag and it got very confusing about whose bag was who, but they all lost their bag tags and they still got it done, Chris. They still got the bags right to the rifle owners, right? It is not hard to address this problem and solve it. Like you can figure out who the disgruntled fan is and have a conversation with them and say, "Hey, how can we make this right?" Which is kind of like, "How can we make you shut up?" But there's still a way to do this because here are people who do give money to the school and are doing this instead. Can spend, has spent. Will they spend again? Like there's ways to pull this back if they want to, if they want to. And I know this, Chris, because the background of the story is many of the people who were involved here a couple of years ago inspired a fundraising movement online to generate tens of thousands of dollars for the NIL.
Over a hundred
Over a
thousand dollars
hundred thousand dollars for NIL for West Virginia. Like there was
in a
negative news.
weekend.
Yeah, there was negative news. Players were leaving, and it was little old West Virginia's NIL program isn't good enough. So these fans, many of them the same group who are erecting billboards around town right now, said enough's enough. I'm tired of this stereotype that West Virginia can't or won't let the fans do something. They inspired scores of people to donate over $100,000 for NIL. Like there were people, like capital P people, who were messaging you and me, Chris. Someone told me how much money do they need to hit the goal. I said I think it's $7,000. That person wrote a check for $7,000 to hit a goal, right? $7,000, right? Which isn't, I don't know, a lot. That's a big number for something like that, I think. Just so they hit a goal, and that goal kept going up because the momentum was such that 25. Well, let's do 30. Let's do 50. Let's do 100. Let's just see how long we can go in X hours. Great. Same people did that. They were invited to be part of the spring game. Didn't happen. That invitation then became, let's have you to the athletic director's suite for a home game. Didn't happen. It actually did happen. There was a call the night before the game for one person. And that person was like, well, it's tomorrow and I don't live near there. How am I going to make it happen? Thank you, but no thank you. No acknowledgement, no follow through on promises, things like that. And they're mad for some time. And to see like their intentions of, we want to make this good, not that long ago, Chris, a couple of years ago, too, we want change right now. It's not hard to fix this or at least address this or get this back in. And like people are mad because it wasn't handled the right way before now. And here the same people are doing this and really kind of sticking a pin in the voodoo doll here. I think there's a way that you could address this if you want to. I'm not sure they will or they want to, though.
Yeah. It feels like a missed opportunity because that was an opportunity to where, like you said, those fans, when things were negative, it was bad,
Yeah.
and they said enough's enough. And it was off season. It was like April. Like it wasn't even like it was like a random spring day. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
even during the season when everybody's frothing at the mouth for football that they did that. And then to kind of you had you had those fans, that intense fervor on your side, and now it's not on your side. And we're seeing what's happening here. So again, I guess also there's the point of there's an opportunity to win them back. What's that going to
Yeah.
be? Who knows? Like, I don't necessarily believe it's only firing Neil Brown. Like, there are other opportunities to bring these fans back. So, again, is this what I would do? No. Are we affiliated with it? No. Do we understand why the fans are doing it? Yes. Does that sum it up?
Yes. Our head is not in the sand on this, too.
No. Yeah. I
Again,
mean, we're not ignoring it.
if you have three rollerboards, they're the exact same, and there's no bag tags on it in Boston, and you can get the bags back to the rightful owner. If you want to get to the people who are behind this, it's not difficult. It's not. You can make this happen if you feel like the bed is not yet made. But it's again, the ball is in their court right now if they want to.
All right.
Otherwise,
So
you just stick your head in the sand. And you hope these billboards go away in 30 days, and whatever damage they do goes away. And you're just, again, the overriding thing here is cross your fingers and hope they go 4-0. That's really kind of the MO for football right now, is can they get 4 wins and make this all go away?
So that was a Katie Ledecky analogy and a Hallmark Christmas movie analogy in back-to-back weeks. You are a
I'm cultured.
Renaissance man, sir.
I'm cultured, Chris.
All
All right.
right. The rest of the
That
questions, again, we'll have two more on 3-minute videos, and we will do a written mailbag as well with some others. Yeah, we got a wide variety here of no baseball. The streak of baseball-related questions has come to an end, but we do have some football, some basketball, and women's basketball in here for us to answer throughout the week.
some good women's basketball vibes right now too.
Yeah. Did you? The question was, is this going to be the greatest WVU women's basketball season ever? I was like, oh, hold on, I'm gonna have to do some research on that. That's why we can't answer that on the podcast because I need to check this out.
It doesn't take a ton of research though. I mean, it's a question for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Crazy. All right. Well, Neil Brown today. Some stories from that, some stories about, again, the 2/3 point of the season, what's happened, what's coming. We got some ideas thanks to the questions, hopefully from our answers. Until next time, I'm Mike Casazza.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.